Welcome, and thank you for joining us at the Mermaid Vet Podcast. I'm your host and practice manager, Tim Hobson,
And I'm Dr. Mosites.
and today we are going to be talking about all things Turkey Day. So, starting out, Dr. Mosites, tell me a little bit about your family traditions for Thanksgiving.
So my mom was Scottish, so we would do Thanksgiving, but it was always a bit of a new thing in our that side of the family at least. So, but she would do turkey, she would do the stuffing, uh, all the fixings, and generally it would just be just me and my immediate family at home. And then as an adult, with Dr. Hagstrom, she has a new tradition where she will super coupon and get like an entire turkey meal for like $15 from Target. And it is like, she looks forward to it every year. It is a competitive sport for her and she makes sure it happens. What about you, Tim?
That is somewhat of a superpower. Myself, growing up, it's always eat a light meal, take a nap, and get ready for Black Friday shopping. It used to be fun where you stayed out overnight, camped in line all night, and then when you got inside, you were elbowing people for Tupperware and blankets. Now it's all online, unfortunately.
I loved it. I loved the chaos of it all. Like I used to work at Target, and if I wasn't working, I would just go in to just let it soak in until like a fist fight broke out near me. What about cranberries? Do you eat cranberry sauce?
Uh, from a can, always. I don't know what the deal
Right?
is. It's better that way.
Right? Oh, it's
The
so much
shape
better.
is perfect.
Jellied, yeah, and just slice it.
Yep, absolutely.
You slice it. It's got to have that tin baked into it because this is America, damn it. Like, who are we if we're eating real cranberries?
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you what they look like, honestly. All right.
All right. So speaking of cranberries,
Yeah, let's get right into it. So let's talk the first topic, of course. We know that there's going to be a lot of furry family members sitting at the side of the table waiting for their share of Thanksgiving. So let's talk food. What would be considered safe, and also what are some of the foods to stay away from for our furry family members?
this is a great one because everyone likes to complain at the vet because the vet is always a downer and giving all the difficult to take advice. But this is actually an easy one. Tim, what's your least favorite Thanksgiving food?
Turkey.
Okay, other than turkey, because Jesus, what's wrong with you? I
Stuffing.
asked, and I knew you were going to say that. This is something I just learned about Tim that apparently he does not like turkey, and I don't know. I'm going to have to call someone, look into
Just
you.
here for the ham, the mashed potatoes, and the cranberry sauce. That's it.
All right. So, a normal person might say Brussels sprouts, green
No, those are the
beans,
best.
something boring, something plain. Those are probably your best bet for your dog if you have to give them something, right? Ideally, just give them their regular diet. A pediatrician friend of mine was commenting that he told his vet up here in Orlando, he said, man, like what I wouldn't give for my poops to be just as solid and consistent as my dog's. And I guess the vet said to him, well, if you ate exactly the same thing every day, your poops would be that solid and consistent. So there is something to that. But if you must give them something, you shooting for like the most boring, most plain, most health conscious foods possible. Your veggies without seasoning. If you've got like ground turkey or lean turkey, then you're shooting for that. Turkey skin, something that's like a butter ball. I mean, obviously stay away from that. And then I guess after that would be, your pet best, all things in moderation. So like a small amount of a lot of these things isn't going to be too dangerous, with some exceptions.
All right. So you said that there are some exceptions. What foods do we think would be dangerous for the pets that we just should absolutely avoid?
So I'm going to break this down into two categories. There's going to be the foods that aren't toxic in and of themselves or aren't necessarily lethal in and of themselves. And then foods that are specifically toxic or can cause damage specifically because of they're never safe. So ones that are going to be dangerous in large amounts, anything with fat is basically it. So turkey skin we'll get to in a second if it's seasoned. Turkey skin, fatty turkey, mashed potatoes, any of those, anything with a lot of butter, anything with a lot of calories, desserts, all of those are going to cause havoc in your dog's intestinal tract and can cause an inflammation of the pancreas because that's what digests fat for them. So make sure you're avoiding those in any kind of large quantities. I would just say just avoid them altogether because you don't need to give it to them. So please don't. And it'll save me a lot of headaches. in the week, I guess, following Thanksgiving. Things that are going to be toxic though are going to be stuffing, which is a surprising one for most people because the stuffing, the breading itself is actually not toxic, but it's generally seasoned with garlic. It's seasoned with onions. Sometimes there's onions in there. Those two things are toxic to pets. So we want to make sure we stay away from that. That's where I keep caveating all of the vegetable talk and the turkey skin talk with unless it's seasoned, because if we're seasoning it with onion, if we're seasoning it with garlic, then we want to be avoiding that as well, because both of those are toxic to dogs, can cause kidney damage, can cause issues with their blood cells themselves. So we want to avoid that altogether. On the dessert side of things, outside of just routine desserts being high fat and dangerous, obviously anything with chocolate is going to be something you're going to want to avoid. Chocolate is toxic to dogs. And then another one that we should cover as well is going to be grapes or raisins. Not necessarily a staple at my Thanksgiving table, but who am I to judge? So if you've got any kind of salads, any kind of dressings, any kind of bread or anything like that, like raisin bread, you want to make sure you're avoiding giving that to your pet because raisins and grapes are both very toxic to dogs. Weirdly, I had a client once that her dog ate a box of raisins, or she fed it raisins on the regular. And she was like, well, I don't feed him grapes because I know grapes are toxic. And I'd be like, I don't know how to say this to you, but like raisins are grapes. They're just dehydrated. So for anyone that needed that, there it is. You're welcome. You don't have to be embarrassed at a later point in time.
You're not the
Yes,
first.
raisins are grapes. And then some other ones that we're not necessarily going to think of right away. Alcohol, it's toxic to humans. That's why it feels the way it does. That's why we feel the way we do the morning after. So it's toxic to us. Please don't give it to your dog. And then another one is going to be any kind of sugar-free desserts that might have xylitol in it. So that artificial sweetener, they're called alcohol sugars, I think. But dogs can't process that. So it'll actually send them into hypoglycemic shock in some cases. So make sure you're avoiding any kind of artificial sweeteners for your dogs.
Awesome. Well, here's one. How about, again, we know dogs love chewing on bones. What if we cook the bones? If we cook the turkey bones, would that be okay?
So like I said, raisins are grapes. No, if turkey bones, so I guess I actually didn't cover this in the previous one. Turkey bones are definitely dangerous. What happens is because they're hollow, the fun bird facts, their bones are hollow because it lets them fly. That's why they say lightweight. But because those bones are hollow, when dogs chew on them, they break them up and create these shards. When those shards are moving through the intestinal tract, they have a chance to perforate or poke a hole through the intestines, and it starts leaking out all that bacteria, all that digestive fluid into somewhere it's not supposed to be, which is obviously bad, and they can go septic and die very quickly. So bird bones, chicken bones, turkey bones are super dangerous for dogs. If you cook them, it's not any better. They still have a chance of perforation or obstruction. Just find them something else. Like, I don't know like why this is such a desire to give this stuff to them.
All right. Okay, so here's kind of a follow-up question, right? So say somebody didn't watch our podcast, right? They're unfamiliar with the things they can and cannot give to their dog or cat.
Disqualifying.
Yes, absolutely. And they just made the same plate that they made for themselves for dinner. They put another plate right on the ground, right in front of Fido, and he ate it. And then they call you the next day and they said, "Hey, why does my dog have diarrhea and vomiting?"
Yeah, so it's from that plate of food, and then assuming none of they weren't given anything specifically toxic, then my biggest concern, the big vet thing that everyone goes to in the industry, the joke is you've got Thanksgiving and then you've got Pancreatitis Day, also called Black Friday. So pancreatitis is where the pancreas, which is the organ that sits outside the intestinal tract that puts fluids that digest fat for the body into the digestive tract, when it gets either overworked or inflamed and it starts to break down and start to it's either inflamed by itself, or in really extreme cases, it can actually start to leak those digestive fluids out to the surrounding tissue. And so it causes pain, it causes a hunched posture, it causes vomiting, causes diarrhea. So that's going to be the most severe case, or one of the more severe cases that I would think of for it. If they have diarrhea and vomiting, if they ate something foreign, so if they ate something that's scratching their intestinal tract on the way through, but not causing a blockage, you're going to see both of those things. And if they cause something that's causing a full blockage, then they're going to have that vomiting repeatedly with nothing come out the other side, not able to hold down water. And then the last thing is going to be just dietary indiscretion. So if you or I ate just a very standard diet of chicken and rice every single day, and then we went and ate White Castle, then we went and ate a hot curry, then we went and ate something our body wasn't used to, there's a good chance that you were going to get diarrhea the next day. Your dog's body is no different. If you give them a suddenly very different and very rich meal after having something pretty standardized for a long time, it's not going to be adjusted to it. It's not going to know what to do with it. And so you're going to get some GI signs as a result of it.
That makes perfect sense. I was just thinking we did miss talking about one food that gets usually ate a lot around this time of the year. One very big, round, orange item, right? We're talking pumpkins. We're talking fall. We've got leftover pumpkins from Halloween. We've got just decor everywhere, right? So pumpkins everywhere. And I've always heard that you can mix in pumpkin, or it's okay for dogs. Draw the line for me on that. Are pumpkins good or bad for the dogs?
I'm going to call pumpkins neutral. So I've known some people that will swear by giving their dog canned pumpkin as a cure for all sorts of things. It doesn't really cause any harm, other than that if you're giving your dog canned pumpkin instead of seeking veterinary help, that can lead to them getting more sick and causing a worse issue than you started off with. But generally speaking, it's a lot of insoluble fiber, so it's non-digestible food. It just passes through them. Sometimes when I use it, it's going to be when I'm trying to add some bulk to the stool. I can find sometimes that can help, but pumpkin is let's call it a neutral one, a filler food, and pie filling specifically doesn't count. So if you're giving them pumpkin pie, that's not the same as canned pumpkin. That is a bunch of nutmeg and cinnamon and sugar, and that's
But
why
you said it was neutral.
we like it. Yeah, neutral. Yeah, but then it becomes basic. Then I turn into a real basic dog. So getting their pumpkin spice latte.
All of a sudden, they're wearing a cardigan and they're in the Starbucks drive-thru line. Yep. So we discussed a few items, different food items that they can and cannot eat. So now, let's pretend that my dog ate these things, right? And I'm going to ask you just, what should I do, right? So let's start with the one that we know is never an okay idea. What should I do if my dog ate chocolate? Got in the chocolate pie. What do I do?
All right, so there's kind of two options available here, other than go to your vet or go to an emergency clinic. But when we're looking at detoxification, or when we're looking at toxicity, we want to detox the body ideally as quickly as possible. If we're looking at something that we ate that we shouldn't have, we want to get rid of it in most cases as quickly as possible. So we're going to break this down into, do I cause them to vomit or do I not do that? So chocolate, if you can, I would induce vomiting. It's not very kind to the body, but you can use about a tablespoon of hydrogen peroxide, and that foaming inside the stomach will actually cause irritation, which will induce vomiting. So they'll throw that back up. That's going to get rid of a lot of it if you get to it fast enough before the body has a chance to digest it. So chocolate, I would say induce vomiting, get to the vet. If you don't want nasty chocolate nastiness all over your floor, if you're uncertain of how much hydrogen peroxide to give, if you're not comfortable with it, just go to the vet. We have better medications that can induce vomiting that are less harsh on the body.
All right. Now, what should I do if my dog ate skinny grapes, or as you call them, raisins?
Really soulful ones, right? Because 80s kids, you got the singing California raisins.
Oh yeah.
I would induce vomiting again. Induce vomiting, get to see a vet.
All right. How about raw bread dough?
Induce vomiting, get to see a vet.
Love it. Turkey bones?
I would not induce vomiting in this case, because although they're in the stomach, there's actually a chance they'll digest while they're there before they move into the small intestine. So keeping them in the stomach for as long as possible is actually kind of ideal, because they'll slowly break down. The problem we have is that when they move out of the stomach into the intestinal tract, that's when they're more likely to cause issues. And we don't know when they're going to do that. So get to a vet as soon as possible. But in this case, I don't recommend vomiting. I know of plenty of cases where dogs have successfully produced turkey bones when vomiting has been induced, but I personally don't feel comfortable with it, because what is much worse than turkey bones in the stomach that are stuck are turkey bones in the esophagus that are stuck. Because think of if you had to go in surgically and you didn't have a scope, you have to be at an emergency clinic. Basically, you have to be at a referral center that's got a scope, because otherwise you're busting open the chest to try to get there.
All right.
So
Now,
do not induce vomiting, go to a vet.
Now let's go into the non-food items that dogs eat. I have a Labrador Retriever, and anyone that has had a lab or knows a lab knows they're going to eat anything and everything they can. So now, what should I do if my dog ate, say, toothpicks?
Do not induce vomiting, go to a vet. The toothpicks will not dissolve. They're not going to break down because they're insoluble. So you definitely want to go be fetching those before they move into the intestinal tract. So it's not going to help them being in the stomach in any way, but get to a vet. get x-rays taken, get them fished out if you can.
Okay. How about what do I do if my dog ate aluminum foil with drippings? Because they're going to eat the food plus the foil.
Yes. That mixed bag, I guess. I think you can make the argument either for inducing vomiting or not. I would probably just take them to the vet in that case, though, because that's especially if you're not sure, it's going to show up beautifully on X-ray, and they're going to give you some good advice. If they tore it up and you're talking about really small pieces that are just going to cause irritation, it's a good chance they'll pass. If you're talking about one big wad of aluminum foil, less likely, right? Then you're just talking about shapes. So getting to the vet, finding out what's going on would be helpful with that. If you're not able to go to surgery, getting them on fluids is going to help pass that. Another thing that you could potentially do at home is to give them a couple pieces of bread with a bunch of petroleum jelly in the middle, petroleum jelly sandwich. It is not studied. I don't have great proof that it works. I'll probably get yelled at by somebody for even suggesting it, but I have seen it work wonders. Basically, the idea is that it lubricates the intestines, obviously, and that the bread kind of takes up mass and stops the irritation of the intestinal tract as things move through. So
yeah, it turns into an internal slip and slide, huh?
This is not medical advice. Do not sue me if it goes wrong.
All right, let's do one more. Okay. I am Paula Dean's Chihuahua. What should I do if I ate a whole stick of butter?
On that one, Tim, I'm not even mad. I'm impressed. No,
I can't speak Spanish.
Baxter. I would probably induce vomiting in that case. Butter by itself is not toxic, but you don't necessarily want all that fat going into the intestines. You don't want all that work going to the pancreas. It could cause inflammation. So in this case, I'd say the vomiting is a little bit less harmful than digesting all that butter. But on the other hand, I think of these things, it's the least harmful in and of itself. So go to a vet. That's the answer. That's the answer for all of them.
Yeah, no, I like it. Well, let's move on, right? So our pets eating different variety of food and non-food items, that's obviously a concern we're going to have every Thanksgiving, but there's also the behavioral aspect, right? This is not a normal time. We have more family, whether they're welcomed or not in the house. We have, just chaos, meals at irregular times, an excessive amount of food. What would you suggest for helping me prevent my dog from counter surfing on Thanksgiving?
I'll turn this one back to you, Tim. That's not specifically a vet question. So what would you do?
Let's see. The tricky part for me, I have a Great Dane and a Lab. Both are relatively tall. And so for me, I had to put things in the very middle of the island or in the middle of the table, or even, unfortunately, in the sink where they can't reach to them. So try to make the food inaccessible. I also try really hard not to ever leave it where it's not supervised. My Great Dane has gotten very tricky, and what he'll do is he'll bark like there's something at the front door. We all walk out and look, see if there's at the front door. We turn around, he's eating whatever he wants. Very smart when it comes to that.
Wow.
Yes, yeah, he's figured out all the tricks. So for me, supervision, placing out of reach, and if it gets really bad, put him in another room. Put them in a room with their favorite toy, close the door, and then let them get some rest.
Yeah, man, I think I treat it like it's like having bears or raccoons around, right? Like cover up everything, put it away, put it out of reach. Make sure if you've got like a garbage can that it's got a secured lid on top of it, and make sure that you are keeping them separate from where the food is and cleaning up whenever you can. So like I can't even leave stuff in the middle of mine because my Malinois will get up there, and it doesn't happen often, but he's like real sneaky about it, and it's terrible when he does.
Oh. All right. So now we're locking up our food. We're secure with our food. However, our pets are still anxious, right? They're uncomfortable. This is not a normal day in their life. How would you suggest us helping keep our pets calm and happy?
One of the biggest things that I recommend for keeping a pet calm, if you've got guests over, if you've got a lot of changes, is to, well, I guess rewind the clock a little bit. I love crate training. I love making sure animals have their own space. That's basically like having their own room to be able to retreat to. Animals appreciate stability. And so what you're trying to do in a scenario like this is you're trying to make sure that they have one space that's still stable, one space that's still theirs, one spot that they can go to that's unchanged so that they can get away from it, right? If they are stressed out by these individuals that are in your house just the way you are, just the way at the end of the day, you just want to retreat to your room, you want your dog to have a space that they can do that as well. And that's going to reduce the likelihood of having any kind of issues with your dog and with your guests. Um, Another thing that you can do would be to use calming either medications, pharmaceuticals, calming supplements, or calming treats. And so there's one called dog appeasing pheromone that works as a spray, works as a treat, works as a plug-in that you can use. And another one would be if it's a situation where it's going to potentially cause either risk to them or risk to your guests, there are sedative medications that we can use from a medical standpoint as well.
All right. So got my dog calm, got their little treats, got them in their safe space. But what about the initial when the guests arrive and they're kind of jumping up on everybody? And other things like we're worried about guests leaving the door open and the pets getting out. Any other advice just for these irregular situations?
Yeah. Don't invite people who leave the door open. I don't know. This is a legit question. These aren't ones that we came up with. These are
I
like
know.
top search questions. Like, how do I stop the door from being left open? I don't know.
Don't grow up in a barn.
Right? Tell grandma, close the dang door. Live in the north, right? Because all that cold is going to come in. Yeah, what I like to do is I like to keep my dogs separate when guests arrive and let everyone settle a little bit. And then I like to let them in one at a time whenever I can. So that way they're not feeding off of each other. They're not competing to get to that guest. I like to make sure that all my guests know about my dogs, that they're comfortable with them, that it's not going to cause them to panic. So just taking steps to make sure that the situation's as controlled as it possibly can be, which is admittedly difficult at the holidays, which is why they're so stressful for us. But making sure it's as controlled as it can be and making sure that everyone is prepared for the situation that's about to unfold.
Absolutely. And I think it's a perfect segue for this next question. Very common question. Is it okay for my dog to be around small children during dinner?
So you know your dog's best, you know your small children best. Generally speaking, I would keep them separate, especially if they're not familiar with each other, especially if you've got a pet that's not used to being around small children. I would keep them away in general if you can anyway, because as difficult as it can be to resist giving your pet all those treats that we just talked about at the top there, giving them turkey, giving them skin, giving them mashed potatoes, it's even more difficult to get your kids not to do that or small children not to do that. So even outside of the danger of like a bite situation or food guarding or begging, you want to make sure that we're not having those little gremlins giving your dogs food after midnight and creating more of them and causing you issues and slipping them chocolate, slipping them onions. So I would, whenever you can, just keep them separate, keep it in a different room. But you know your pet's best, you know your kid's best, or your nieces, nephews, whatever the case might be, and you know your limitations. So if we've only got the one room, it's going to be tough to keep all 8 big dogs out of it.
Yes, and let's add another element to that, right? Let's talk about our grandparent-in-law's mischievous Pomeranians. They like to bring with them, right? So now we've
Mhm.
got family traveling long distances, bringing their Pomeranians with them in the car. What's the safest way for them to travel and get there? Granted, they somehow got permission to bring them.
Make sure they don't leave the door open. So I guess it depends on where you're going, how you're getting there. So if you're doing air travel, make sure you see a vet on a regular basis if you're not already, of course, so you can get a health update. Make sure that there's no added risks to them flying. If they've got a heart issue, if they've got lung issues, if they've got anything like that, you want to make sure that you're aware of it, if nothing else, so that you can take that risk, a calculated risk with it. Make sure that you get, if you need it, an air travel health certificate, because interstate, sometimes that's required, especially if you're going out of the country, you'll need to get an international health certificate. So just make sure you're prepared from that side of things so that your pet's not getting turned away or stuck into quarantine unnecessarily. And then if you're traveling by car, it really depends on your dog. Like how far you're going, is it something they're used to? Do they get motion sickness? All those things all come into play. And then Florida, we have hot cars still, even here in the winter. So making sure you're not leaving them in a hot car.
Absolutely. Another one that we get here, another question we have here is kind of like going along the line of somebody leaving the door open at your house, right? How do I prevent my pet from escaping with guests coming and going? And a few of the suggestions that we have here are, of course, it's always a good idea to have your pets microchipped and you can do that at your vet practice. We gladly do it here at Mermaid Vet. Of course, you can always set up temporary gates. You can have apps with tracking collars, and then also keeping cats. Cats are going to be sneaky. They're a little less noticeable. Making sure that the cats are always away from the doors whenever the doors are opening, and you're watching the open and closing quickly, because they will dart and they will get out there, and you will unlikely get them back. All right. Well, I believe that wraps up the majority of our questions here for Thanksgiving. I guess the last big one is, something happens, right? You have a turkey bone ingested on Thanksgiving. You don't want to wait for the next day. You want to get handled immediately, right? Where can you go? We unfortunately here at Mermaid Vet, we are going to be closed on Thanksgiving and the day after. We're all taking a little bit of family time and a nice little break. However, here in Vero Beach, VMC on US 1 will be open on Thanksgiving. So if you have an emergency situation, you need to go somewhere on Thanksgiving Day, that's where you're going to want to head. Well, thank you again for joining us here today at the Mermaid Vet Podcast. If there are any questions that we did not answer, or maybe just unrelated topics you'd like us to speak on, please feel free to comment. We will soon be on YouTube as well, so like and subscribe once we get those up. And again, anytime you have a question or comment, if you can't reach us through the socials, we are happy to take your call at 772-925-1625.
And happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving.